We're live from River Valley Room at City Hall.
I'm going to start us right away. I'm just trying to get into the Google Meet. It's just slow. The computer's slow. Everything's working, don't worry. It's just very slow. As soon as I hit join. All right, good morning, everyone. It is 9:30 a.m., so I will call this meeting to order and start with a land acknowledgement. At this time, I'd like to acknowledge that we meet on the traditional land of Treaty 6 territory and acknowledge the diverse Indigenous peoples whose ancestors' footsteps have marked this territory for centuries, such as Cree, Dene, Saulteaux, Blackfoot, Nakota Sioux, as well as Métis and Inuit, and now settlers from around the world. So we're going to start with a roll call, and we'll change up the order and follow the golden sheet in front of us for fun. Councillor Rutherford.
Good morning.
Oh, what a lovely greeting. That sounds delightful. Good morning. Councillor Cartmel.
Good morning.
Good morning. Councillor Hamilton. Do I have Councillor Hamilton?
Can you hear me? Good morning.
Now I can hear you. Good morning. Councillor Jans. I do not see Councillor Jans on the list yet. Councillor Paquette.
Good morning.
Good morning. Councillor Principe.
Good morning.
Good morning. Councillor Rice has given us notice she is away on city business for the Alberta Industrial Heartland, so she may be joining us but may not be able to. Councillor Salvador.
Good morning.
Good morning. Councillor Stevenson.
Good morning.
Good morning. Councillor Tang.
Good morning.
Good morning. And Councillor Wright.
Good morning.
Good morning. I should check if Mayor Sohi is with us today. Not at the moment. He is always welcome to this committee, but he doesn't have to be here if he doesn't want. Or is busy with other things. I shouldn't say, maybe he might really want to, but might be busy. Let's be fair. Let's do adoption of the agenda. Councillor Rutherford.
I would like to move adoption of the March 3rd Council Services Committee meeting.
Thank you very much. Any questions on that agenda? Seeing none, please vote. I was purposely trying to delay because it's e-scribe slow for me.
We're just loading the vote.
Excellent. Take your time.
Yes, for me as well, Councillor Jans.
Thank you, Councillor Jans. Thank you, Councillor Paquette.
Yes,
I did not vote verbally.
Yeah, I think that was
You're
Councillor
welcome.
Cartmel. The first vocal was Councillor Cartmel, but now Councillor.
Oh,
so there we go.
Thank you, Councillor Cartmel. Councillor Rutherford, can you confirm your vote?
I put it in e-scribe, yes.
Thank you. We have all the votes.
Thank you. Please display the votes. And that is carried. And we did hear, didn't I hear Councillor Jans?
He did give a verbal vote. We'll correct it in the record.
Perfect. Thank you. Next up, the approval of the minutes. Who would like to move those? Councillor Tang.
I can move. So moved.
Thank you. Excellent. Any errors or omissions? Seeing none, please vote.
We have all the votes.
Thank you. Please display the vote. That is carried. Protocol items. I don't think there were any that I am aware of. Selection of items for debate. I'll wait to see if somebody wants to select it on the board. Councillor Rutherford, do you just want, are you going to the mic?
I could, I thought you would just select.
I shouldn't select it. I should let others select it.
Okay, I will select item 7.1.
Very good, excellent. 7.1 is now selected. That is the only item on the agenda. So there's no other items to vote on. Request to speak, always shocking when there are none. Terrible. Request for time specific on the agenda, there's only one. And councillor inquiries. I did not get any notification in advance, so I think we're good there. So, without further ado, let us go to 7.1, the Common Travel Plan Council Engagements. Are there any opening presentation or comments?
No engagement was conducted per the motion, and we've brought forward the requests for emergent travel for Council Services Committee's consideration.
Fantastic, thank you for that. And I'm just going to wait for folks to come on the board here. And it was selected by Councillor Rutherford, so I'll start with Councillor Rutherford.
Okay, yeah, so it sounds like the new costs are $18,175 for the total requests. Is that's, if I'm remembering from reading the report, that's above and beyond the budget, right? That's, we don't have the budget for all of that amount.
Correct, Councillor Rutherford, in the projected estimated costs. However, the actuals may come in under that. For example, not every councillor may attend FCM, so the annual conference. So there might be some savings realized there once the actuals come in. So by the time that you know the FCM actuals, you may find that you don't have a shortfall.
Yeah, and I see that, for example, you put all councillors attending the President's Summit and Leaders Caucus as another example.
So the cost is per person there in the chart, so it's $350 per person. So that's right now for one person to attend. So Council Services Committee would need to determine if more attendees are required.
Okay, so that's just
and that
for
would
one.
increase the projected costs.
Okay. So I guess, based on all of this engagement and seeing the list, is there any recommendations that you would make in terms of ensuring that we stay balanced in our budget while also providing those opportunities?
The President's Summit, for example, at $350, it's very likely that you would have enough in your budget to cover everyone who wished to attend, for one example.
I guess, okay, and then maybe I'll come at this at a different angle. Was there equity across requests? Did all councillors, is there additional requests from all councillors?
I'm sorry, Councillor Rutherford, I'm not quite understanding.
Like when you did the engagement and you asked us as council, and we filled out the form, if there was other things that we wanted to potentially have opportunities to attend, did you get responses from all council?
So, Councillor Rutherford, it's the city clerk here, and apologies if I can't quite see Kathy. Kathy and her team did complete the exercise. I think it would be best if the councillors themselves wanted to speak to the requests that have come in. Based on my recollection of what was submitted, I would not say that the requests could be easily divisible by 12.
Yeah, okay, well I'm just trying to get an understanding of, without going into specifics of any one specific request, I was just trying to get an understanding of, would there be opportunity to adjust this if, let's say, one councillor requested 5 things and one requested 1, I'd want to make sure that the councillor that requested 1 got that 1 request, whereas maybe the one that requested 5 may need to prioritize. That's what I'm trying to get at. So I will leave it there and I will see what other folks have to say.
There we go. We're in. We're back on. Thank you, Councillor Tang.
Great. I'll just pick up right there because full disclosure, I think I am responsible for 4 of the 7 agenda items here, items here. And but I guess just to revisit that question, every councillor's had the opportunity to provide input, and some put in more than others, some didn't put in at all, right?
Yes, Councillor.
Great, thank you. I think I saw this more of a brainstorming exercise and probably put in more than I should have. I apologize to my colleagues around that. Maybe just speaking to the items that I have put forward, certainly not, really married to any one of those. And what I was thinking is, things also might come up during the year, and approving this report, I think I would just worry about us locking into things that may or may not be a good fit, later on. Things might change, or some things might come up later in the year that could maybe benefit from some participation. So I don't know how to go about this, but maybe like, is there a kind of a principle we can work around in terms of flexibility? And also just for the 4 that I had put forward, like the Calgary Stampede, for example, it was really just, I'm sure lots of councillors go, and typically we do pay out of our war budget, but there is such sort of a intergovernmental role there, and I have wonder, is there a way to, but again, I'm not really tied to these, and I'm happy to take that one off since there's only one, even though I know other councillors do go as well, and I don't know if I'm able to do that. I don't know. I don't know. I guess any thoughts on that, Kathy? And I'm curious about the chair's perspective, if I can ask the chair that as well.
I would say this is up to your committee.
Yeah, and I think something I was going to ask about is recognizing we might have a more holistic approach going into 2024 because we can do engagement with all the organizations. I would have no problem and be curious if there's a way to do sort of almost a standing committee item for this. So if we want to make adjustments, if there's new things that come up and we turn out that a bunch of things folks don't go to, in my mind, there's no reason we couldn't do those adjustments at various committee meetings for the remainder of this year and be a bit more formal in 2024.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe just speaking to some of the other pieces I had put forward, some of these don't even have a location determined, so it could be it could be lower or it could be higher depending. There's still so much yet to be determined. And then, for example, the Alberta Recreation and Parks Association, I'm aware of many elected officials participating in this. It's a really good one, but I'm also aware that city administration side has quite a bit of representation at this conference as well. Again, I think it's a great opportunity, but either way, I think Edmonton will be well represented. And then the Participatory Canada Learning Community, this is a study trip. It's not exactly a conference or a forum. And there could be some potential opportunity to align in terms of timeline and potential for cost saving to align with the Big City Mayor's Caucus. But so much of that is still determined. I would just hesitate to approve a report as is, given that there's so much details that we don't know about. So I think those are my 2 cents. And if I don't know if I can. I guess I was going to say, if people have questions about any of the ones that I have put in forward, I'm also happy to take those questions offline. Or, yeah, I'm not sure what the format would be.
We also have the opportunity, if needed, to go into private. If some of these might be related to intergovernmental or an idea that might tie into that, council does, or committee would have that opportunity if necessary. So we can play it by ear, see what some of the questions are, and if any of the questions come up that you would prefer to answer that in camera, then happily we can do that. We'll have the time.
In camera or public, I don't mind either. I just wasn't sure what the format of this committee was going to be.
It's informal.
I know what kind
always.
of back and forth we can have with each other. But I guess my bottom line is I really appreciate the exercise to participate and brainstorm. I didn't necessarily see this as kind of a set in stone, and I would ask the committee to have some kind of, I think, flexibility to allow for that equity and and making sure that we do have, representation in kind of all corners of whatever it is that we decide. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you. Yes, maybe first just to Ms. Griesbaugh, just wondering what is the advice or what has been the practice in the past in terms of determining when something comes out of a ward budget versus a common travel budget? Are there any formal or informal guidelines around that?
Sorry, Councillor Stevenson, was that to me?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that. This is a ongoing and evolving conversation. So again, this is one of the reasons this is one of my favorite committees. It's because the policy that outlines that is the council expense policy. So Kathy knows it inside and out, and that's the one that her and her team uses when requests come forward from your teams. So just wanted to remind council or committee of a couple of things. So there have been lots of conversations as the council budget resource task force work gets underway, and some of the questions that are coming up here today have also come up in those conversations, and it's around equity of resources, equity of opportunities. And so I do anticipate in the future that some recommendations will be coming forward about how to potentially adjust what comes out of what budget, just to make it a little bit more fair. In past practices, and based on many conversations with previous committees, the reason for us bringing this request forward at the beginning of the year is because councillors previously have liked certainty, and they have liked the rigidity of the decisions being made in Q1, so they know how to plan for the rest of the year. Appreciating COVID created some challenges. It feels like a lot of these conferences and travel opportunities are just coming back up. So I think it's good, Councillor, the Chair's suggestion about maybe having this as a standing item, because things are going to come up that we don't even know about. The reason we intentionally took the names off of the attachment was because I think there might have been different approaches taken to putting in the requests. And again, this is the budget that is determined by yourselves. And if you want to go in camera and talk about how to share out those opportunities, happy to do that. Or you can refer this back to us, approve what you want, and we can take this away and have some more conversations.
Great, thank you. Well, that's really helpful, and I appreciate. I think this idea of leaving it looser for now to sort of evolve over the year makes sense to me. I was just wondering too. I'm really mindful of our OP12 conversations, and I know Mr. Corbold mentioned that administration is taking a really strategic approach in terms of the number of delegates they're sending to different events. So not necessarily saying no travel at all, but being really intentional about how many people are going. So that's maybe just something I would I don't know how to phrase this as a question, but are there, because it's a question to my colleagues, I guess, but is that a consideration that we want to take as well, that we self-limit, let's say for FCM, or sorry, I'm trying to think of what was the really big one. The annual conference in Toronto, the FCM, if we want to self-regulate and just manage our delegation going there, that could be a way to address the budget as well. I'll also just share that for myself, I really, really appreciate the equity of opportunities. I am very happy to not be traveling right now. So very happy for other colleagues to go. So I think we can kind of hopefully balance that out as well, just between people who are more homebound at the moment and others who want those opportunities. So if for whatever reason my name isn't on any of these, I'm very comfortable with that, just to be clear to others. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Wright.
Hi, thank you. I'm just wondering, so the estimated cost of the 18,000, I mean, that could go up, that's only taking into account one person. So that could go up substantially if all of council wanted to attend these events, right?
Correct, Councillor Wright.
Okay, so I'm just, and for the ones that are in and around the Edmonton area, wouldn't our car allowance sort of cover those costs, or is there registration fees?
Councillor, that is registration fees.
Okay, so it's not any other travel costs then?
Correct.
Okay. And then I'm just wondering, maybe to the chair, how is this information fed back to the whole of council? So maybe what the goals or the objectives are for the individual councillors, and what information that they garnered, that would impact all of council, or information that could be provided to all of council.
Yeah, it's a great question. Something we haven't had too formal of a process. So for certain things like FCM and Alberta municipalities and Canadian Urban Transit, we had check-in points with council, typically biannually, where we would report on the various groups that we're a part of, and we would share. Sometimes that would include written reports. But I think that would be part of the conversation we'd want to have, you know, for formalizing this going into 2024 as an example. What is the expectation of somebody that goes? Should they be providing a written report? Should we have some type of template? And we can, especially if it's not included in the existing reporting structure that we have.
Okay, because I know I'm as guilty as anybody, I think, with the Intercity Forum on Social Policy, and sort of identifying what that table has identified as sort of the primary goals for the year, or for the next remainder of the term. So I was just wondering, yeah, what the process would be. So I would like to discuss that further, maybe.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I don't know if we've sorted out when the reporting, like, again, we used to have a built-in agenda item, and this might be a better question to our clerks around if there is a planned agenda item on a future council meeting for reports back on Intercity Forum on all of those pieces.
Yeah, so Councillor Knack, thank you for that. We haven't had that conversation in quite some time, so we are looking at scheduling the strategic look ahead shortly with ARC. We're just resolving some scheduling issues. That's actually something that we'll bring to the agenda. I realize there's different expectations on what sort of reporting is going to come forward from councillors. Perhaps what we could do at ARC is have a brief conversation about what would be most helpful rather than just being verbal. Maybe we could ask for a one-pager that could be circulated as part of the agenda, because that item itself can usually take at least half a day because there are so many touch points with councillors and external agencies, but we can bring that up at ARC and get more clarity.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you. I will put the recommendation on the table. I'll move that. I haven't. Can you hear me okay?
Absolutely.
Great. I've got a not great internet connection right now. Yeah, so I'll put the recommendation on the table. And I guess the recommendation right now is that we fund that $11,000 delta. My question to the clerks would be, would you take that from a different place in the common budget? For instance, I know that we don't host as much as we used to. Or are you looking to reconcile this at year end from different sources in the common budget?
So I can't see Kathy, so I apologize if I'm jumping in on her. I'm not sure that we can approve a deficit. That's not permitted, but you do have money in council contingency. So I think you could approve this subject to us just confirming that I know you still have money in council contingency, or we could look at taking it out of the common budget, but we would like direction from this committee.
Part of me, so I'm looking at this, $11,000 is not a big amount. I hear, like, relative, I should say, to the sort of larger budgets that we deal in. I feel like this might be something that gets resolved by year end. So I'm inclined to say that it's funded from the common budget, and that gets reconciled at year end. And if we need to take from contingency, we could, but I just don't see that this amount of money would be an issue in terms of finding it. That's my instinct on this. So that would be my suggestion. Take it from the common budget.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions or anything else?
I don't have questions, just to maybe speak to some of the points that have been brought up.
Sure. So do you want to wait to like officially close, or, I mean, because we are somewhat more informal in this committee than most. Did you want to?
Yeah, well, I might just, like, I think my colleagues have made really good points in terms of about, do we all need to go to certain things? Do we all need, how are we reporting back on the value of these professional development opportunities? I would note that there's very seldom a professional development opportunity as an elected official. And so AB Munis and FCM are two of those opportunities. And otherwise, I don't think we've found those types of opportunities. Most professions require that you do some ongoing professional development. So I think it's important that we give council that opportunity. And historically, the amount of participation Edmonton has shown at both AB Munis and FCM has demonstrated commitment to the larger goals of those organizations and has allowed us to take on leadership roles to help craft advocacy agendas and so forth. So I would caution against limiting or pulling back at this point, because unless, for instance, in 2 years we find that people are finding other opportunities for professional development, and we'd like to spread that out. The second piece, I think, and you mentioned this, Council, but we used to have a reporting back period, and I don't know what happened to it. I'm glad to hear that it's going to get put back on the agenda, but I think it's created a sense of, I think it's taken away an opportunity to ask questions and have a formal discussion about what's going on these external agency appointments. And and there's no other way to bring those on the agenda unless there's like a decision point, as you know, from the AB Munis perspective. So I look forward to getting that back on the agenda so we can talk about the really amazing work that we're all doing on our externally appointed committees. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll jump in with a few questions, and maybe just because recognizing there's a bit of a shortage right now, I can't remember a single year where all members of council have gone to FCM as an example, right? But we budget assuming everyone says yes, correct?
Correct, Councillor. And we did an informal poll, and it looks like potentially 8 councillors wish to attend.
So that, if we divide that number, I think we've essentially covered our entire shortfall.
Correct, Councillor.
So I mean, I get that's why I wanted to ask it, because I don't think we have to be too worried, because even if only 8 go, we're covered. Even if everyone goes to everything else that's listed, or rather, we have a representative at everything else listed there. Okay, that's helpful. So that gives me a lot more comfort even on that. And then we'll obviously have the results of the independent review in advance of 2024 to inform what that budget should or shouldn't look like, which can then help set us up, correct?
Yes, that will be available by September 30th.
And we'll have a council services meeting after that report is complete, but before the new year to be able to review that and help inform budget, correct?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, that's great. Wanted to just ask about recognizing some of these, we would put out to everyone to see who's interested, not unlike you did for the housing forum in Ottawa, which it turned out nobody was able to attend. The one particular one I would flag is for Canadian Urban Transit Association. Typically, it has been the CUTA rep, which at times has often also been the person on ETSAB. In this case, there's 2 separate folks, and so I guess the question is, so my suggestion would be that for the Canadian Urban Transit, that actually should be Councillor Rutherford as the representative on ETSAB. Do you want us to make that clear now, or is it better to just approve this and you would still essentially do an outreach to make sure, or what would your thoughts be on that?
If it could be made clear in this meeting, that would be great.
Okay, so I would probably amend specifically on CUTA that for those particular items that it would be Councillor Rutherford, because she is the representative on ETSAB. And that has often been how we've handled that in the past, and there's an important connection between the two. So I won't assume that's friendly, even if it is. I think it's probably important for me to make an amendment, and then if anyone does want to speak to that or express interest, so I'll make that as a formal amendment that we adjust the 3 CUDA items to reference Councillor Rutherford. And then briefly, again, I think I sort of introduced it already, but just to be very clear, is that it has been very beneficial to have the ETSAB representative at CUDA meetings. We are in a situation where it used to be one and the same, and that was often me. Now it is 2 separate individuals, and the board of CUDA is looking to be a little more active and engaged. They're going to be having a new chair and vice chair, and I actually do think it would be, not unlike something like Alberta Municipalities and FCM, important to have more than one council representative there, because the various meetings that happen and the sessions that happen, there's a bit of a divide and conquer benefit. So I'd like to, while we've already approved me at the beginning of the year for this, I'd like to make sure Councillor Rutherford, if able to, has the opportunity to join. And the added piece specifically to the policy forum, something Edmonton's never been represented at, is the policy forum, where we're typically meeting with members of parliament and talking about transit funding, and we've actually not been represented as far as I can remember at that. And so it would be nice to have a couple of us there, not unlike an FCM, when we're dealing with issues like that. So that's, I want to make it clear, and appreciate there might be others that be interested in the future. We can talk about that, but I think in the short term it makes the most sense to have the ETSAB representative joining. So what we'll do is I've made that amendment. We'll specifically focus just on that item. So if anyone has any questions or wishes to speak, well, let's start with questions on the amendment. So I'll see if anyone wants to jump on the board if you have questions on that.
Councillor Knack, just to confirm, the amendment that you're proposing would state that the following items be added to the motion on the floor, specifically that the 3 Canadian Urban Transit Association engagements be attended by Councillor Rutherford. Correct? Correct.
That is absolutely correct. Thank you.
We'll get that loaded.
Thank you. We'll get that loaded and just wait a moment in case the board is, I think it is open, but I'm not seeing anyone per se. Okay, I'm gonna assume the lack of clicking on means there are no further questions. Is there anyone wishing to speak specifically to that amendment? I think there will be one person clicking on to speak to that amendment. Councillor Rutherford. We're just going to let Councillor Rutherford speak that. There you go. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you for that amendment. I really appreciate it. Full disclosure, I did put those 3 items forward in conversation with Councillor Knack because I do think that there is a gap and a delta. So for example, even at the annual conference in Edmonton, because it's in Edmonton, a big bulk of the Edmonton Transit Advisory Board will be there. So it's weird that the rep for that, the council rep wouldn't be there as an example. I think that we have made it really clear as a council how important transit work and advancing transit is as a municipality. And so I think putting concerted effort to have more advocacy, whether it's me or other councillors, in terms of a bigger presence at those things like the policy forum, I think is really essential right now, as there is a lot of conversations on transit funding and we want to be at the forefront of that. So I just thank Councillor Knack for making that amendment and appreciate the opportunity to be a part of those. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see anyone else on the board for this item, so we'll just call the vote on this specific amendment. Please vote. Oh, I guess I have to do my job too and vote.
Just waiting on a few votes.
I'm a yes. Sorry, it's not coming up for me. Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you, Councillor Stevenson.
Yeah, I'm a yes as well.
Thank you, Councillor Rutherford. And one other vote. Councillor Jans.
I don't see Councillor Jans on the list anymore.
We have all the votes.
Then declare the vote, and that is carried. Thank you. So that amendment is passed, so we're back to the main motion.
What we will do now, Councillor Knack, is replace the main motion with the amended motion.
Fantastic.
So just give us one moment to load that.
Yeah, take your time, and then we can let folks jump back on the board if there are other questions. Okay, well, I think I'm just looking at the board and want to just double check. Councillor Stevenson, are you on the board for this?
Yeah, just to ask maybe a further question before we move the recommendation.
Yeah, and the recommendation is moved by Councillor Hamilton, but feel free to continue asking questions or if there's any amendments. So go ahead.
Sorry, vote on the motion, the recommendation. Yeah, again, I just do want to circle back to, again, us sort of showing leadership as the governing body as we go through OP 12. You know, I do really appreciate the point that it is incumbent on us as governors to stay fresh, to have our skills upgraded. But I do, again, recognize that a lot of conferences and training opportunities bring that same value to our staff, and we're asking them to restrict that for a budget savings. I know we're talking about very small numbers, but I still think the action is important. So just wondering what formally taking that type of approach would look like, just to make a clear statement to our staff that that's a position that we have as a group. I would look to advice from the chair or from clerk.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just one voice serving as the chair at this moment, but I would suggest that part of why we're doing this independent review is to showcase that we're doing this in a thoughtful way. And the recommendation might in fact come back on the independent review that in fact they would suggest more, but it's being done based off an independent body. So I feel like that's our avenue to address 2024 and beyond. This year's a little more challenging because we're doing this a little bit on the fly because we haven't done this in the past. But I think even from what I've heard for something like FCM, not everyone is attending and has already made that decision or signaled that they've had that. So I feel like maybe we're already showing that and we're not looking to go beyond our existing budget. So that would be just one perspective, but
yeah, and as I understand it, and I appreciate that this is a small thing, but again, when we're asking our organization to do such a big thing, I think the small things do matter. So if we approve the recommendation as it is, we are approving going over budget. We're also approving that everyone, you know, that there are opportunities where all of us can attend events. That to me just seems in contradiction to again what we're asking our staff to do. So that's my discomfort. I say debating the chair, but I'm happy to have a dialogue. I think it's great, and you know, happy for other people to weigh in as well.
Yeah, and maybe because we do have a mover now, and Councillor Hamilton has also been here, we could maybe pose that question to her if you're okay with that. If Councillor Hamilton's willing to.
Excellent idea.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Then we're fully following the rules. Councillor Hamilton, are you willing to answer that as the mover?
Can you repeat the question, Councillor Stevenson?
Yeah, I think, you know, again, the recommendation as it stands, we're approving going over budget for our travel expenses, and also approving that all of us can attend numerous events that come at a cost. again, I appreciate that from a practical perspective, it will probably all work out. I just feel that that sends a really contradictory message to our staff, given what we're asking them to do with OP12.
So I think that's a really good question. What I would put to you is, so we're not going over budget, we're going over a allocated budget per line item. I think that's why I was asking about, are we taking this from the common budget? So we're taking it from pre-allocated pool of money and reallocating within that pool to a different line item. So and I would prefer that over, say, taking it from council contingency where that money is unrestricted. I also think that this question came up, I want to say last OP12 update with the city manager, and he said that he did not think that, for instance, restricting travel to events like FCM or AB Munis was sending sort of the wrong message. And it's because those are networking opportunities, but also professional development opportunities. I think what's important, or what I've heard from the city manager with respect to the impact on administrative travel budgets, was that they're not freezing all travel. This is not that. They
Yes, and
are
sorry,
looking.
just in the last 5 seconds, but they are restricting their delegation. That's what I heard from the city manager.
They are, yes, but they're looking at that more closely. So we can look at those. I think we could look at those opportunities more closely. But honestly, if we're looking at two, like there's one travel opportunity per year for 12 or 13 of 12 of us, as compared to an organization of 13,000 people. So I think we're looking at different scales. That would be my positing of it. We're looking at different scales of expense and travel.
Thank you for that. I'm going to go to Councillor Rutherford. Hasn't actually been, both Councillor Rutherford and Councillor Wright have had a first round. So Councillor Rutherford, you may go on. I think you also have a further.
Yeah, I just would like to make a further amendment following Councillor Knack's lead, that Councillor Tang be added to the Bloomberg City Lab as the name for the councillor attendee for the Bloomberg City Lab and the Participatory Canada Learning item, and that I haven't talked to him, but Councillor Paquette be added to the Big City Mayor's Caucus Reconciliation Circle, because I assume that he's the one that put that request in. So if not, please do speak up, Councillor Paquette, but I've made that amendment.
Thank you. Do you want to take a few moments to introduce that while we're working on the clerks are working away on the wording of that?
Yeah, I think just, I think I'll speak more broadly to the conversation about the uncomfortableness, and I think, one of the things that I would highlight is we play different roles, and we are decision makers that are guiding the city for years to come, and we have networks that we need to leverage to make Edmonton the best place it can be for now and future generations. And so to me, I see it as a very different role. And I think if we're not at that table, then Edmonton is missing out. And so I think that these opportunities where there's an interest and where there's expertise from our colleagues to go and make those connections, have those conversations, and bring results back for Edmonton, I think it's absolutely worthwhile. So I get the hesitation, and I understand that tension with OP12, and I think that for me, there's a huge difference in our roles and responsibilities as councillors to see results for Edmonton. And so sometimes, just like in business, you have to spend a little to bring back bigger returns. So that's my perspective on this, and then I will let others speak to the specifics of the amendments and their names on those amendments.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Rutherford, may I just clarify one point? The second part of your amendment was that Councillor Paquette be added to the Canadian Urban Municipalities. I missed the next part as the name Councillor attendee.
No, the Federation of Canadian, the Big City Mayors Caucus Reconciliation Circle.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Good clarification.
Thank you. And so we are just asking questions on the amendments at the moment. So Councillor Wright, do you have questions on this amendment?
Not on the amendments that have been put forward, but perhaps another amendment to it. Just in hearing Councillor Stevenson, as far as, you know, I guess the perception and the leadership maybe that we should be showing in reducing costs. Could we, I think Kathy had mentioned that there was only 8 councillors that had indicated their desire or intention of going to the FCM conference. Could we perhaps, and I don't know, Councillor Stevenson, is this where you were maybe trying to go with putting an amendment forward to restrict the number to FCM?
Don't know if I should answer.
Yeah, we're in this awkward place of she hasn't quite made a motion, but we are somewhat informal. Councillor Stevenson, if you want to quickly answer that, because there are rules, but somewhat no rules in council services.
Yeah, that's
what we were getting leeway on.
Well, and Councillor Wright, you have made concrete a very abstract thing I've been circling around, so I think that's an excellent suggestion and something I would support.
Okay. What I would suggest is if we can wait to do that as a separate amendment, because that's this is clarifying who's attending, and then we can deal with the amount separately, if you're okay with that, Councillor Wright?
Yes, yeah, fine, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions on the amendments? And I'm not seeing anyone else on the board. I'm just to speak to the amendment, so I'm not seeing any other questions for this amendment. So I will start speaking to it because nobody else has clicked on. So this is just speaking to it at this point. Yeah, I'm gonna. Well, maybe I'll wait for the amendment on the FCM piece to speak more broadly to the points that Councillor Stevenson has raised. Just to flag on these again, I think. Broadly, we are doing a little bit of this on the fly in 2023, as we've touched on. Councillors have identified, though, we all had the opportunity to identify different things that we think would benefit our attendance. And so I have trust that in this case, you know, Councillor Tang has identified these items, and I believe that it would be reasonable to have her attend based off the need that's been identified. I think broadly we have had that conversation about how we report back, and we probably should develop a bit of formal reporting back to ensure that we know what was accomplished on those trips. And that shouldn't just be for these ones listed on the amendment, but all of them as we go forward. And so I'm very comfortable with doing this. And then I think the other question around equity of ensuring folks have opportunity is that the Bloomberg City Lag, I'll take as an example, might be valuable if it is an annual piece. I think it's annual. So maybe this year it's Councillor Tang and next year it's somebody else. And we rotate between folks who might be interested to ensure we're all benefiting from the knowledge that might be shared at those pieces, whereas maybe there are other ones where it makes sense to have the same person going, but something like that I think could be great to rotate as we go forward. But for this year, I'm very comfortable having Councillor Tang attend the 2 items that she's been added to the list on, and Councillor Paquette as the item for the Reconciliation Forum based off an earlier conversation we've had at this committee. So I think those are good changes and good to make it formal so that there's not confusion on those items. So I will happily support this, and then when we discuss the FCM thing, I think I'll speak broadly to the points around how we show restraint in what we should be doing and some of the travel pieces. So that's it for me. Councillor Tang.
Great, thank you so much. Maybe I'll start with the specific pieces with my name shared to them. You know, both of these opportunities really stem from my work experience in the public sector prior to being elected. And with the City Lab, you know, it's well attended by elected officials, you know, urban innovators, you know, from the civil society, from private sector, and so it's just such a conglomeration of different sectors coming together, and we're not only learning in a kind of a national context, but a very international context. And I know that the takeaways I had previously representing the city there on behalf of Recover Social Innovation has been tremendously beneficial. Previously, our mayor, the previous mayor, has also participated in the same conference, and I think there is benefits for both kind of the elected official role and the I guess the administrative side. And then for the Participatory Canada Learning Community, this is specifically focused on a project in Halifax that has come up, as part of the sharing through the Reconciliations Circle as well. And this is an initiative that I helped during their pilot phase, and but never really got to experience. And I think that experiential piece is actually quite important. I mean, I will say this past year we've tried, some of the initiative like community-based budgeting with Councillor Knack. That's actually because of the experiences and successes in other cities and jurisdictions. And I don't want to just stop there. And I think there's a lot more we can take in, but also share back. There's actually a strong connection with Edmonton as well, and I'm interested to see if there's anything from an experience side that we can kind of bring back. And I think broadly, I really appreciate that comment around kind of self-regulation. And so for me, and this is why, coming back to my initial point around flexibility, it could be that, something comes up and I can't, or I don't want to go to any of these, and I will hope that there's flexibility on this committee that we can have alternate representative, or not at all. I think I just hesitate to set everything in stone at this point, but I really appreciate Councillor Rutherford's amendments here, so we at least know, as a kind of as a baseline, we do have some representation at these tables, because if we are not there, not only are we missing out on the representation piece, we're also learning out on the learning piece, which I think I've seen benefit so many areas, and I think we're in this role to do that. So I think I take that self-regulation piece to heart, and I think, like I said, when I initially kind of submitted these, I didn't really mean for them to be kind of a be-all and end-all. I thought we were going to have a discussion, and potentially, others can benefit from the Stampede, and I don't need to, and I feel like we have that culture, I hope, within our council to really work some of these things out, and being very conscious about, I guess that balance, I think, is what Councillor Stevenson you were alluding to. So I have confidence that we can work this out in a way that's not about being over budget or being overly exorbitant, or even to be seen as being exorbitant with our travel, but really in the interest of benefiting the city and Edmontonians. Thank you.
Thank you. I saw Councillor Paquette, I think, was on the board to speak to it as well. Please go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Councillor Knack. And thank you to Councillor Rutherford for throwing up this amendment. It's a fascinating conversation in that obviously a city is very complex, and there are complex needs and ways to think about how we fill those needs. And part of that is knowledge, part of that is reputation, part of that is experience. And a lot of those things you only get through talking with other people and being exposed to new ideas. One of the things that occurs to me that we really talked about in the last term when it came to food production, really quickly, at that time, I was making the case that India and China would, in coming years, become net importers of food. That has happened. And where does Edmonton stand as far as being able to provide that need? One of the things we lost out on was federal dollars, massive federal dollars, on creating a food hub based around protein fractionation. Now, that sounds really dry and boring, but that was a lot of investment that was missed. And I attribute some of that with not being at the table. And that's what these travel experiences do and what a good travel budget does. It allows us to be at the table in order to compete nationally for federal dollars and also compete reputationally. It also allows us to compete as a place to invest. Because if we are not forming relationships, if we are not there, then the chances are that those who are there will be the ones who receive that investment and receive that attention and interest. But there's also the international component. What we know now, and is becoming more true every day, is that cities are in competition internationally for investment, internationally for immigration, and for people expressing interest. And so, again, if we are not at the table, if we are not in the rooms, the name of Edmonton will not be there, and we will miss out. And so there are a lot of very fundamental economic reasons for us to be there. And then there are also all of the other attendant benefits. For example, at FCM, I saw the mobile food project that they were undertaking in Halifax. I brought that idea back to Edmonton, and it was modified to an Edmonton experience. And that's how we got our mobile food going here. Got disrupted during COVID, but it's coming back. And that has served very well folks who are on a budget, who are looking for food. And we found a provider who was able to do that. But it's those experiences, and from the small to the large, that actually help us make a better city. So I'm very much in favor of these moves. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. I don't see anyone else on the board. Councillor Rutherford, do you have any closing comments?
Nothing further.
Thank you. Please vote.
We have all the votes.
Please display the vote. Thank you. That is carried. I'll go back to Councillor Wright because she was interested in putting forward maybe amendments on the FCM piece. I don't know if she's had some time to reflect on that. Councillor Wright, are you?
I was more interested if Councillor Stevenson was interested.
A friendly showdown. I love it. Councillor Stevenson, are you interested in adjusting I think the cleanest way would be to adjust the budget number.
Sure.
And if I did my math right, it would be $29,630 would be the new budget. So
Great. Well, I will make a motion that we adjust the budget for FCM to the numbers said by Councillor Knack. And if I can introduce that briefly, really appreciate the discussion that we've had today. I think, absolutely, it's critical that Edmonton is out and that we're at tables to get ideas and very tangible resources for our community. I think that our city staff also do phenomenal work in those rooms as well. The work that they do with their administrative counterparts is exceptional, and I think it's important that we recognize that contribution as well. I think that this approach of gently limiting our delegation size is a really great way to balance both, again, those really critical pieces that have been spoken to in terms of having Edmonton at the table, helping us best serve Edmontonians, while also recognizing the resource impacts and that our city staff are making these exact same. We're asking them to make those same decisions about how to be as effective as possible with their resources. And I think it's incumbent upon us just to do that as a body as well. So appreciate the idea from Councillor Wright, just in terms of how we could do that. And I recognize in a very small way when it comes to financial, but I think it is important to show that we are in OP12 with our team, and that we want to support that work in our actions as well. So thank you.
Thank you. $29,630 is the number you're looking for?
And just to clarify, is that reduction specifically for the Federation of Canadian Municipalities annual conference?
Correct. That's for the annual conference.
Perfect. We'll get that amendment loaded.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll wait to see, I'm just going to briefly speak to it, but I'll wait to see if there's anyone else on the board to ask questions to that change. Councillor Hamilton is on the board for questions.
Yeah, and that is just relating to, I'm just conscious that we're making these changes 2 months out from the annual conference. And I'm just clarifying that addresses, that allows for existing expenditures or existing commitments to be covered. Is this just essentially, is this just a line item? This is to administration. Is this just a line item change versus an actual, are we going to have to go back to people with existing expenditures or ourselves who may have registered, we may have registered for the conference ourselves and revise that amount?
Councillor Hamilton, this should be enough to cover your all current registrations. And intended registrations.
Okay, and does this also include the, because there is FCM travel writ large, this doesn't include the mayor's travel, but it does include, I know we've now added Councillor Paquette, but it includes travel to board meetings as well, correct? Or is that a separate line item?
Councillor Hamilton, that is a separate line item that is funded.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I'm not seeing anyone else on the board for questions, so I'll just quickly speak to it then. I'll support this because I have heard that 4 people have suggested they're not attending, and so essentially the new amount assumes the cost of 8 people instead of 12. I actually wouldn't support it if 12 wanted to go, and I'll maybe get into more of that larger debate in the main motion, but to speak to FCM specifically, and I would sort of lump in AB Munis with this, is that we make policy decisions at those sessions, and our votes actually do contribute to that, and I would hate to restrict the number of councillors that can attend those, because we are the ones voting on what the policy, what we're going to be advocating for as organizations. We get to vote on who will be representing us at those on those boards, and we've actually had a policy on these 2 in particular, FCM and AB Munis, that every councillor is entitled to attend as if they choose to, right? And not everyone can because of a variety of reasons. But hearing what I've heard, that the 8 have expressed interest, this amount just reflects that new reality. And then I'll wait to speak to the main motion again about broadly, I think, how we need to look at this particular topic, because I think it's one that has been ignored. And I know there's some sensitivities, as Councillor Stevenson has identified, but I also think we need to recognize, as Councillor Paquette started touching on in one of the previous items, what we've been missing actually as a city, and how that impacts even things like economic development, quite frankly, and something we haven't talked enough about. So, but for this change, it's very reasonable. And again, this is a 2023 only change specifically based off who has expressed interest. So I'm comfortable making a change right now. Thank you. Councillor Tang, to speak to it.
Yeah, I support it for a lot of the things that Councillor Knack had mentioned. Just I'm more comfortable with the dollar figure change versus the sort of the initial kind of number of positions. Just want to kind of emphasize on some of the points that he mentioned. These are not necessarily just networking things. We create resolutions that takes actually months of work. There's no active ones going on right now with Alberta municipalities. And I know for the FCM one similarly, and in fact, I'm aware of some active potential advocacy items related to FCM that I think it would be actually quite critical for us to be there for. these two bodies, there's there's a responsibility to membership, and for those of us who are on the board, I think it's actually quite important for the city of Edmonton to be at those tables. There's a power in presence, and I know we're talking about FCM specifically here, but I'm just thinking, if this were Alberta municipalities and we limited the number of people who can go, I think that itself sends a huge message about where we stand on various issues. And I will hate for any kind of misunderstanding that might have impact on political interference or other kinds of dynamics, unintended, absolutely, but there will be, unintended consequence on the sheer, what is the interest for the city to be involved in intergovernmental advocacy, or and our presence actually conveys a huge message in that. So I support this for this year because I think there has been a lot of conversations about who wants to go or who doesn't, and I'm comfortable with the dollar figure change, but I won't if it really comes down to kind of the number of people. And I think to Councillor Hamilton's point, there is we're quite cutting it pretty close, and I will hate to see that kind of having impact on any kind of planning. And maybe just as a plug, I really support these kinds of provincial and national intergovernmental advocacy bodies. Actually, maybe I'll save this for the bigger one. But I just think it's really important that folks do attend. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rutherford to speak to it.
Yeah, so I'm actually not going to support this. I get that it's innocuous. I get that at the end of the day, we're probably going to come in at that budget point anyway. But I think for some of the reasons that Councillor Tang mentioned about the message it sends about, especially if you think about the decision we just made around regional transit and some of the sensitivities there, I just don't think limiting anything around FCM or AB munis right now is a good look on this council, and I think that it comes out in the wash anyway. So while I get the intent in terms of being acutely aware of OP12, the goal of OP12 isn't to limit Edmonton's opportunities. The goal of OP12 is actually to expand our opportunities. And so I really want to make sure that we're looking at it that way, because this conversation feels like the opposite. And so I will not be supporting this amendment on the floor for those reasons. But I do appreciate the intent. But those are the reasons I won't be supporting.
Thank you very much. Councillor Stevenson to close.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know if this will be a historic non-unanimous vote at council services, but I think it's great. I think it's great. I think it's a great conversation. I think we've come to a good spot. I really appreciate the distinction my colleagues have drawn between limiting attendance versus limiting budget, and I appreciate the signals that can send to other orders of government or regional partners, national partners as well. So I thank my colleagues for the conversation. I think this is, we need to think about those signals that we're sending externally. We also need to think about the signals that we're sending internally as well. And I think that this strikes the right balance of hopefully, speaking to our commitment to both of those groups, our internal staff who are working incredibly hard, and also our external partners as well. So thank you, and I hope you, vote your conscience, appreciate the conversation.
Thank you very much. Please vote, everyone.
We have all the votes.
Thank you. Please display the vote. Oh, that is defeated on a tie. Look at that.
Sorry, that's the third vote I've lost on a tie.
Well, that's good. That's maybe that's a record. That's great. This is momentous occasions here at Council Services. So that amendment has been defeated. We're back to the main motion. Are there any other questions on the main motion or amendments before we vote on the amended motion as ultimately put forward by Councillor Hamilton. Yeah, specifically, we'll see if there's any questions. I want to just make sure I know we've exhausted a lot, but just in case, after all is said and done, if anyone had anything new, I'm not seeing anyone come on the board. Therefore, I think we can move into the speaking to the main motion as put forward and as now amended.
We're just getting that loaded for you.
Of course, yeah, take your time, no rush. Well, and I don't mind starting us off while that wording is getting up as amended. We know what we're about to be voting on, so maybe I'll kick us off if that's okay. Sure. So I'll start just by noting, yeah, I mean, I'll be supporting the main motion. I mentioned throughout some of this discussion that I think we have taken a very rigid approach to travel over the years. To the point where I think it has actually been challenging us in terms of economic opportunity. And most recently, the fact that Mayor Sohi had to publicly post on his social media about, it was a personal trip to The Last of Us premiere, when that generated so much economic activity for the city, and he has the opportunity to meet with other film producers and folks in the industry, that actually shouldn't, I know he was there for personal reasons, and that's fine, but he shouldn't have had to have been so careful about that. And I get why. Publicly, anytime any politician travels, and gosh, there's even things in the news from the province in the last, couple of days, it can sometimes be seen as very extravagant. And so we do have to be careful about the amount that we spend when we're on those trips. And I think there's a level of diligence we all have to show. I mean, I think about the upcoming CUDA trip in Saskatoon, and my budget that I'd been approved for was $2,650 between the hotel and the registration, which is done. I'm looking at just under $1,400, and transit's usually covered as you go to a transit trip, and there might be a little bit of food, but I'm expecting to be probably $1,000, maybe a bit of gas, but I'm going to drive to Saskatoon, but I'm going to be well under what has been approved because I want to show that diligence that I'm not just, taking every dollar available to me. But we need to, we are missing out on some of these opportunities to bring in greater opportunities. Some businesses, for any number of reasons, want to also meet with the elected representatives of a city they might be looking to set up a headquarters in. For some, that is very important to them, along with knowing that they're going to have good permit timelines and all of that. And so it can be valuable to have somebody out at these different types of events. And so I don't want us to shy away from it. To Councillor Stevenson's point, we have to be very careful and the message we're sending, and at a time when we're asking the organization to do a lot, it can seem a little odd to say, okay, let's use the entire budget that's been allocated and that we've rarely used in full. But again, I think there's a lot of upside to be doing some of these things and having a presence. Specific to FCM and Alberta municipalities, I would hate to see us restrict the number of people, and this has been talked about already. And in fact, as Councillor Tang will also probably do, I think people need to be at these events to vote on the various items, to make sure that the resolutions we're putting forward as the City of Edmonton, which will direct the advocacy of these provincial and federal organizations, is important to have a full presence. And so I think it's something we really need to be doing. So I don't think the two things are mutually exclusive of attending important events to try to make sure we're advocating on important issues and getting economic development opportunities and getting knowledge opportunities that we can then bring back to the City of Edmonton, and at the same time being very diligent about every single dollar we spend. So my final piece would be, we've approved these numbers. Doesn't mean we have to spend every single penny. So any of us who are going to these various things, don't look at it as a challenge to say, how do I make sure I can get right up to the very max? Look at it as saying, we've been thoughtful. There's been a lot of work done by administration over the years of budgeting out what those costs are and being very careful about that. And then we can do our additional due diligence of managing those costs. But I actually hope that when the independent review comes back, because this is something I flagged for that committee, is that I think there are more things that we need to be at. And not every one of us. I mean, truly, I think one of us can attend a lot of different things at different times to actually get more economic development into our city. There are other cities that do this far better than us, and we've been so scared because it seems like this political, you got to tiptoe and on any single trip. But I think we need to be thoughtful about what we're trying to accomplish broadly in the city of Edmonton. And so I'll support this, and I'm looking forward to, in 2024, a more thoughtful plan that can be even more deliberate about our goals. One of the things flagged in the report was making sure we're engaging with Edmonton Global, Edmonton Unlimited, all of these groups in advance, and say, where do you want us there? Where can we be helpful in the work that they're doing, so that we're not guessing, that we're using our experts to help inform that. So that's how I'd like to see that. Thank you. Councillor Tang?
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. One of the things I really appreciate my colleagues, and not just here, but across the board, is really kind of our consciousness, and I would say heightened awareness with every decision we make, and how it might have the impact on Edmontonians, on the taxpayers. And whether every penny we spend, what kind of return that generates, and this is why I think I asked for a bit of that flexibility, and I know that's not maybe typically how we do things, but I feel that all of us are extremely conscious around some of the decision, whether it's travel or otherwise, and are constantly, even with some of the travels we have done, we're also always constantly looking for cost-saving measures, whether that's rooming or carpooling or staying with friends and family, even just to make sure that we're not, I guess, going overboard or be seen as that. So I think, number one, I feel like what is happening today doesn't necessarily put us in a bind or anything, and I think there is that interactions and conversations that will happen to make sure that we're still constantly working towards the best return for investment, essentially. And when I think about our first year, for many of us, it's first year in politics. We go to a lot of things, sometimes to kind of understand the landscape, understand the dynamics. But now, as we kind of really ease into this role, more of those priorities that Councillor Knack had mentioned are really surfacing. At least I know it's been for me. And I think we want to capture every opportunity we can for that economic attraction, for partnerships, for public sector innovation. During the pandemic, a lot of things have become virtual, made maybe travel less of a thing. But I have found that the relationship build for the in-person, you can't get that online, and the opportunities that surface for in-person gatherings is unmatched to perhaps some of those maybe cheaper but virtual options. And I guess finally, to some of the points, because I did know that I was going to support the last amendment, but Councillor Rutherford really convinced me, because I think about even just the upcoming municipal leadership caucus with Alberta municipalities. It is maybe it's seeing a small, but it's actually not. It's here. It's a relatively, I think, economical gathering, and I think it sends a huge message about our presence there, considering some of the decisions we made. And it doesn't have to necessarily fall on just the representative of those associations. I think it's for all of our responsibility. We all play that intergovernmental role. I think actually to Councillor Principe's point a few weeks back. So I will just maybe take the opportunity here to do a bit of plug for MLC coming up at the end of March. I encourage all my colleagues to take that opportunity and meet some of your colleagues, in the region or in the province who have shared interests, large and small. That's something I've really appreciated about these convenings and being part of these associations, is to recognize the issues we have in Edmonton isn't unique to us, that there are actually cities, small and large, who have kind of shared issues. And when we do come together, whether it's advocacy or partnership or opportunities, I think the impact is much bigger, and we need to think beyond I guess, our borders, and, and I guess I think outside the box too. Anyways, appreciate this conversation though. It has been really interesting, and I personally have benefited over the years as a student, as a professional, with some of these opportunities, and I see tremendous benefits, and I hope that can benefit everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you. No, I really, really appreciate the conversation. And I think that a lot of my perspective is informed by my extreme good fortune at having such capable council colleagues and city administration at these tables. So, my perspective really comes not from a de-emphasis on the critical importance of this work, but just that I feel it's in very able hands through our designated representatives, and also from other colleagues who are attending. So I will keep up the historic controversialness of this meeting and not be supporting this motion. But again, in the spirit of really recognizing the value that this work happens, and a deep appreciation for those of my colleagues who are doing this work. It is truly important. And I look forward to getting better educated about how I can support that work more actively. But I will not be supporting the motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Wright.
Hi, thank you. Although I guess I do recognize the economic impact and the benefit of attending these conferences. And it's not just networking or professional development. But I think we need, there was a motion made to reduce the overall budget, and I think that might have been the way to go, but it just seems that we may have been adding to it. I think for all of us to be able to understand what the benefits are, I think we need to establish or reestablish that feedback loop, so that attendance by a few or a few designated individuals then is to the benefit of the whole of council. So I'm also interested in the initiative that Councillor Paquette had mentioned, what was it, the mobile food initiative. So I'd like to learn more about that as well, and how we can engage other organizations in Edmonton for that. But as I said, I will be voting against this, and encourage my colleagues to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Paquette.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Obviously, the reason for my travel is deeply rooted and based in reconciliation and finding solutions to problems that we are facing right now in our city and that other cities are facing. So I'm wondering if there would be a will to separate these, because I don't want to speak for anyone, but it seems that reconciliation is something that we're really committed to.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because we already technically voted them on as individual amendments, so to then re-vote on them is essentially a re-vote on what's been added. So I don't think we could, in this case, it wouldn't likely be in order to split.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I guess just to quickly comment, it is a bit concerning to hear that maybe folks might vote against this, because it means that I will either use my word budget or what is more likely my own money to attend. So that is a little bit disturbing. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rutherford.
Yeah, I wasn't going to speak, but there was one comment that did trigger something for me in terms of wanting to say, and I think one of the pieces that we're forgetting is also the team building amongst our council colleagues at the things that we can attend, like FCM and AB Munis, let alone with our regional colleagues and our federal colleagues. It's an opportunity where I've been able to have casual conversations, go for walks in You know, that I think we went in the Regina River Valley, Councillor Tang and I, and, you know, you just build different connections and rapport that in this kind of setting, whether it's a casual committee or council or public hearing, we don't always get, and we have so many things pulling us in directions that having that time set aside where we can have those casual connections as colleagues, I thought that was missing from the conversation today. So I did want to highlight that to my colleagues that maybe haven't gone to FCM or haven't gone to the Alberta Municipalities Conference, especially when it's out of Edmonton, that there is also those benefits as well. And I think that while, you know, honestly, I love that we all work so well together, relationships are not something that you can take for granted, and they need continual work. So that continual touch point is something that I think is really valuable. So I just wanted to mention that, because I think in this conversation, that is one piece that hasn't been mentioned yet. With that said, I will be supporting this motion, and I thank Councillor Hamilton for all of her great arguments. I don't know if she's going to close, but I think she's made some really salient points throughout this debate about why this is valuable, and I also appreciate the other side of the arguments and some of the tensions we're feeling around, you know, our financial realities. And I will just keep going back to that piece around, I truly believe that we always have to put our money where our values are. And so we can't say, for example, you know, we value reconciliation and then not send somebody to the recreation circle. We can't say we value regional collaboration and then not do regional collaboration or not support that in our budget. Like, budgets are a direct reflection of values. And I think that, for example, me going to the transit, you know, we've talked about how important transit is, how much we want to build that out. I know I have a secret objective. It's not so secret for the Metro line to have actually get moving past Yellowhead Trail. You know, I need those times and those opportunities to move those objectives forward. So I hear the hesitation in voting no, but I would really, or in voting no, but I would really encourage my colleagues to see that this will come in on budget. There will be balance. Not everybody's going to attend everything, and I think that we've also highlighted some big gaps as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't see anyone else on the board. Councillor Hamilton, do you want to close at all?
I could, but I don't really need to. I think everyone's made this has been a really good discussion, and I think for future years we have a really good plan, and I look forward to seeing everyone in Toronto.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hamilton. Please vote.
Just casting the vote.
Thank you. No problem. No rush. Lots of time still.
Just waiting on 2 votes. We have all the votes.
Thank you. Please display the votes. And that is carried unanimously. Wonderful. Thank you, everyone, for an excellent discussion. That is the only other public report in general. So I'll check to see if there are any notices of motion or motions without customary notice. I am not seeing any, so everyone's favorite committee is now adjourned.